Combat Thoughts. I'm Robbie.
I'm Lee.
And I'm Alex.
We're going to take a deeper look at culture and philosophy behind martial arts. The original reason we thought up the podcast topic is, John Danaher talks about three different types of fan. He talks about fans of violence, fans of skill, and fans of drama. And these are why people are attracted to MMA. And then Dean Thomas talks about three different types of fighter: artist, animal, athlete, and the fact that most people fall into one of these three categories, or maybe more than one. So we're just going to talk about how they match up, who fits into each of these categories, maybe if we think the categories need modifying, and how that sort of works into how we've spoken before about what attracts people into martial arts. So if we start with the fighter side of things, artist, animal, athlete, like what are you guys' thoughts on it?
So I think it'd probably go through kind of who the artist, animal, athletes are, because it helps kind of bring together where the outliers are. So artists are the kind of specialists, show skills, your kind of Adesanyas who are doing great distance.
Yeah, it's like the real martial artists.
Yeah.
I think someone like Ryan Hall fits perfectly into this because it's not very violent. Like, you know, apparently he can knock someone out with a spinning heel kick, but that one fight aside,
That's not his goal, that's for sure.
it's not really, is it? It's to display, and part of it is all about how he displays his skill in the ring.
Yeah.
And he's not really well renowned for his physical ability.
No.
Which is why I think he fits in so well, because he's actually surprisingly ripped if you look at him compared to a normal person. But if you see him up against other UFC athletes,
He looks like a normal guy on the street who just keeps fit.
turns out I think our view is just a bit disproportionate, because when you do see him against normal people, you're like, oh, you're in good fucking shape. But yeah, he's not a particularly physically impressive specimen.
No.
And he doesn't really, you know, if you're talking about violence, like there's no real blood, the animal side of things. He's not creating like blood pooled around the floor. He's not like doing loads of flash knockouts.
No. And neither when he speaks does he ever mention those things. You know, there are fighters who are the animal fighters. They will generally tend to mention that they go in there to bash heads. And
They're the brawlers.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing as well. Does these categories extend into the way they communicate with fans, they communicate with press? Because like you look at like an animal fighter, Mike Perry, say, and he's screaming at people in the cage, looking for blood, but also then being a lunatic outside with reporters and stuff. So I get that, and like it fits for some, but then I don't know, kind of thinking of like the big stars, where does somebody like McGregor fall into one of those?
Well, I think McGregor falls into it sort of more than one category. So if you're talking about, you know, he's genuinely very skilled.
Yep.
So I think the artist point does kind of fall on McGregor as well. I think that, you know, people do knock him, and people sort of complain about various bits of his ability, but I think there's sort of this, weirdly, people either very much overrate or underrate McGregor.
Yep.
I think it's mostly just built on the fact of whether they like him or not.
Yeah.
But he is extremely skilled, but he's also falls into the athlete category, just because how many times have you heard people talking about how like his muscle fibers being fast twitch,
Yeah.
right? People focus so much on his physical ability, and it's interesting to see it. And he does fall into that athlete side of things without really falling into the animal side of things, which is maybe why he's a bit different outside the cage.
But then I think he tries to create the animal persona, because I think that sells a bit better for him. So I think there's the thing of, you can be like a Ryan Hall who's like the artist throughout, but then you have different kind of hats for what you're doing. So in the cage you can be like a McGregor, quite skillful, but then outside of the cage, to be more kind of appeal to fans, kind of get paid, you have to be something else.
See, I think an interesting example that I've just thought of is Anthony Pettis, because he's like outside the cage, he's not a person that, well, he doesn't really big up fights that much. Like, it's not really his persona, and he is like a bit of a martial artist in the sense that, you know, he's got taekwondo background and stuff, but I guess he doesn't really consider, like, his persona is not really the true martial artist, whatever. But when he gets in the ring, he is a bit of an animal, and he tends to get a bit crazy, like especially that fight with Tony, when he had a cut on his forehead and he saw the blood and he was just like,
oh, where he's got his tongue out screaming. Yeah.
So I think there's where you're right, that there's a spectrum there where like people don't necessarily fall into like specific categories, but they actually, in and inside a cage, they might behave differently and fall into different categories.
And then that's the thing, to get to the UFC, you need a bit of the animal in you, because you're going to face a tough fight where you've got to dig deep and kind of...
Well, of course. I mean, people are obviously going to have to fall into all three, because you can't get into the UFC if you're not skilled.
Yeah.
You can't get into the UFC if you're not willing to go through, like...
Well, I don't know. CM Punk had a fight.
Some rogue introductions to the UFC aside, you can't get in without being skilled. You can't get in without being fit, and you can't get in without being a little bit crazy enough to get into a ring with a professional fighter. You know, bad stuff happens to people who are very skilled. I mean, you have to be all three.
Yeah, so then none of them are mutually exclusive. So then we're talking quite clearly about the outliers in each of those categories. Who are your, like, Santiago Ponzinibbio's? Like, the kind of middle of the pack? Are we just talking about the outliers that easily fall into those categories? Where do your kind of middle of the pack, top 15, Owen St. Preux, like that kind of skill level, are they just kind of a bit middling? I don't know. Do the categories kind of form this big ectomorphous blob at the middle of the pack?
Right.
Well, I think part of it is that fighters don't need to fall into any specific one, because as we just described, you have to these are three core aspects of a fighter, and you require those three aspects in order to become a professional cage fighter. I mean, are there any other things, bar popularity, that you need in order to be a cage fighter? I think these categories are less about you fall into this category and you fall into this category. They're more like the three components that you need to become a fighter. The
kind of the foundations of being a fighter is you need to be athletic, skillful, and a little bit crazy to varying levels, and you can be on the spectrum of 1 to 10 on all three of them. And actually, when you look at UFC, Bellator, those fighters kind of vary across the spectrum. I agree with that as a initial kind of gauge of fighters.
Yeah, me too. I think, but it's an interesting point that you raise about, you know, middle of the pack people, because we do tend to, when we speak about these fighters that we have just spoken about, they are the outliers. So they are the people that we have our spotlight on. But reality is there are many other fighters in the roster that they don't necessarily just fall in those categories.
Well, the thing is, we haven't just picked people at the top of the top of their game. Like, what's Mike Perry ranked at now?
Yeah, but he's got that kind
but he's an outlier in one of them.
So what I'm saying is that we're only picking these specific ones because we know about these people.
Yes.
It's not because they're at the top. It's because we know about them more. I'm sure there's other people lower down. Well, actually, you know, Ryan Hall is not highly ranked at all. Is he even in the top 10 at the moment?
Yeah.
He deserves to be, but I don't think he is. You know, we're only picking these people. It's not that you have to be one of these things to excel. These are just good options, because I think actually if you lean into one of these things, it makes you more recognizable in the ring.
Yeah.
Rather than just being a jack of all trades. If you lean into one of them, it's more obvious. I mean, everyone knows that people know him for a different reason, but everyone knows Colby Covington is ridiculously well conditioned. You know, he falls very much into the athlete side of things. You know, because artistically, I'm sure he's a great wrestler, but he's not
an Olympic level athlete. He's not wrestled for a gold medal. He's a good wrestler, but his kind of athleticism is in the cardio, the gas tank, that kind of gets him.
Well, yeah, no, that's it, because it's the athleticism that carries him. I mean, from a wrestling point of view, that he's not, and it's not even that he's not skilled. He's just not doing anything specifically, particularly unique. Not like Ryan Hall is, to keep coming back to him. Ryan Hall has got a very interesting game plan, or not like Brian Ortega does. Brian Ortega's definitely an artist point of view. He has a few techniques that he then works to leverage on people in any way they can, which is why I think McGregor falls more into the artist point of view. He is that pressure forwards, counter left straight, spinning back kicks, and then he makes adjustments where needs be. But those are the basis of his game. And great takedown defense. Those are the skill parts of his game. That's why he falls into the artist part. I couldn't name you a single technique that Colby Covington excels at.
Yeah. He is the pressure, head in the chest, keep going forward.
Just a very durable fighter.
He's also volume. The Lawler fight he won on volume.
Exactly, against Lawler. Ridiculous. And even against Usman, I know he lost the fight, but they were busy. They were busy for a long
very,
time.
very busy fight.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the broken jaw, who knows? I'm sure that affected him a lot.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I think Usman was still going to win that, but at the end of the day, he wasn't doing any specific techniques that you went, oh, wow.
No.
He wasn't crazy. I think the difference between the athlete and the animal is that you're kind of measured when you go into the ring. I think that Dan Hardy, much less of the athlete. You know how he talks about like the full reptile. Yes, exactly, the full reptile aspect. That is perfect animal. He even uses is even an animal term.
And then the other side of it is on a negative. Cody Garbrandt went full animal for a bit, and to his detriment got knocked out a fair few times off the back of it. So it's not always a good thing to be this straight up animal.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when he was being, let's call it, an artist with Dominic Cruz, he absolutely excelled, and everyone thought, holy shit, like who's going to beat this guy? He looked incredible in that fight.
So then is there a correspondence of the three then in terms of what sells? Because we're saying around not what sells, but what kind of gets you traction, what gets eyes on you. Because there is a push on the UFC and like the brands to kind of sell people. So if you look at the animals, so like you say, Mike Perry's halfway down the rankings, but we're all way too familiar with, I don't know, number 17th ranked Mike Perry against another number 17th ranked because it's sellable and it's easy to get that. Is the artist the hardest one to promote? The Ryan Hall argument. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody cares about him, bar the people who are really into their MMA.
It might be, yeah, because people, like, if we're going to come on to fans in a bit, fans in the moment, you haven't got the fans of violence aspect that falls into it. But what I would say about the artist is that they're far more reliable at winning. Consider Justin Gaethje. Comes into the UFC, he's all about highlight reels, just go forwards, just take punishment, get like on the front foot. Perfect animal side of things. But if you listen to his more recent interview with Joe Rogan, they're talking about the fact that he said he doesn't want to be the world's most exciting fighter anymore. He wants to be the world's best fighter. Right? And that's just it. The animal brings out the whole excitement aspect, which is why Mike Perry is so much easier to promote. But it doesn't necessarily make you the best.
And he puts eyes on you and people give a shit about you, but they're not necessarily rising to the top of every division by just going headfirst into fights and not being an athlete or being really skilled at something.
You have to be measured. Otherwise, that's what... Because Conor McGregor does come in very measured to fights. And that's why he, wins so consistently.
His game, actually, his promo game is get you so worked up. You look at what he did to Aldo, Poirier. He turned them into the animal. So that when they come in, they're going forward, not calculated. He can catch you and knock you out. His mind game is to make you switch and flick that trigger where it should be. He was trying to do it to Khabib, and fair play to Khabib, he didn't. He got in there and just wrestled. But you could see all the build-up. He knew he was going to struggle wrestling with him. If you can get him to switch and go pure animal, you get people to be sloppy and you get people to kind of make mistakes. That's how he capitalizes on it, which is brilliant, and that's a smart way of doing it.
No, absolutely. He's... I think to me, like, for casuals, it's always, well, we say casuals, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but, types of fans that don't really appreciate the art of MMA, they don't see the real technical things that Conor is proficient at. And like, he is a very technically proficient fighter, like very, very good at, striking. Like probably one of the best in the UFC, actually, I would say.
Well, I think this is why the fighter profiles and the fan profiles don't quite match up. Because the reason, you're talking about casuals and why some people get a lot of traction is because people are often fans of violence. And violence will come through in either being bullheaded and being an animal, or it can come through in being an artist or even an athlete. I think more so the artist side of things. But knockouts, if you're skilled and produce a knockout, that's you being very much on the artist side of things, Adesanya, for example, but also playing much more into the casual fan base and what they're looking for.
Anderson Silva to me is a great example of that. Perfect
Exactly.
artist. Really, like, if you look at his distance management, his skill standing, his striking was unbelievable. There's a few fights in his career where it really sent him into like that stratosphere where he was knocking people out. The Rich Franklin one with the tie clinch is probably the first one.
Oh yeah.
But if you look at like the Belfort knockout, that's just really proficient artistry, but then is sold as violence. And it's marketed as violence because you've got that 10-second Instagram clip where you've got the up kick or the front kick that kind of knocked him out. Before that, he had a lot of fights. The Damian Maia fight, artistry, he didn't get tapped out by Damian Maia, but nobody really cared. You can sell good artistry as violence, and I think that I agree. They don't match up 1-to-1, but then there's a way you can spin things like artistry to meet that requirement.
Yeah, and I think the violence side of things is where most of the casual fans probably lie, because that's why it's so much more easy to market an artist like McGregor, who's a knockout artist, as opposed to Damian Maia or let's say Brian Ortega. He's doing very well for himself, but okay, back to Ryan Hall again.
Yeah,
like full-on artist side of things, Damian Maia and Ryan Hall, but it's not violent.
I mean, you've seen UFCs recently, well, back before global pandemics, but we still watch it, and they're still booing, they're still wooing every time something happens on the ground. Like, the casual fan, the people who see it for the most part, are the ones who want violence. That we still have, sadly, a lot of just bleed in the audience.
That's why I think every time we talk about this, every time we talk about the kind of fan base of the UFC, to me it always ends up being casual fans, people who just want to have a beer, watch some people knuckle heads, and make some blood, and that's it. It's like it's not. I wouldn't say it's unfortunate. It's just the way it is. It's like,
I reckon I know why it is though, because go to a jiu-jitsu show.
Yeah.
How many people watching aren't jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Right?
Zero.
Like 1%. Like 1 in 100 maybe.
A girlfriend.
Somebody's partner who's not into the sport and has been dragged along because his mate bailed on him.
Okay. Because jiu-jitsu is not the violent side of things.
Yeah.
It's very much the
artistry.
The artistry. And the only reason people there are appreciating artistry is because they practice it themselves. How many people actually practice martial arts within the fan base of MMA?
Yeah.
Right? It's a very small amount, which is why the artist side, like fans of art, are a much smaller proportion, because it's really hard to appreciate, because it's a really complicated thing to understand when you're looking at, like, I look at striking matches, I don't see everything that when I hear it back other people are talking about. It's really difficult, especially in the heat of the moment.
Now on the commentary, Dominic Cruz now is forever correcting Joe Rogan. And it's kind of like, Joe Rogan for years was kind of the breakdown to the casual of what was going on. But he's got to the point now where you've got Dominic Cruz in, who is highly skilled, correcting him and saying, no, Joe, this is what's happening. And actually, to have that knowledge takes years and years of experience, competition at a high level to get to that level. So the artist kind of community within the fan base is considerably smaller, because not many people are able to do it. We all train. I'm guilty of a violence, but I get sold a hell of a lot on violence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course.
because it's really base and animalistic and really primal to be a fan of that. Whereas being a fan of the art, you know, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, if I look at a completely different martial art that I have no involvement in, well, I mean, we've kind of dabbled in everything at this point, so there's not a lot that applies to. I don't know, maybe if I look at fencing, I don't know what I'm looking at.
No,
like,
Well, the Olympics rolls around, right? Should have been one this year. I will tell you. I'll tell anybody who asks, "Oh yeah, I'll watch judo at the Olympics." I'll probably only watch it for an hour though.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah,
Like,
and it kind of, it's like, oh, this looks good, and then it's two black belts who are world class Olympic level, cancelling each other out, moving around. I don't get the intricacies. I don't get the little weird foot sweep that works that nobody else could possibly do. There's only so much of it I can watch because I don't really get it.
but at least with judo, you got the throws, you got the violence. You
Yeah.
have got the violence
but they don't come that often either. So a lot of the time you're just stuck there looking at people, you know, pulling geese. So it's and there's an art to that we don't really appreciate. It's like
fighting for inside wrist control, fighting for kind of gi control. I get it, and I understand the basics of it, but watching a 6-minute match of that, sadly, doesn't keep me for 4 hours. I think this is unmissable television. So.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC is always, I think, it's always been about appealing more to the you know, excitement side of things. It's always been the case, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
The casual audience is needed.
You need it in order for
the sport to grow,
yeah,
and for us to have shows every week, every other week, and to have the big athletes coming into the sport. You look in the US now, people who would play American football, people who would be wrestlers, people who would be basketballers or whatever, are starting to make the trend. We're getting good athletes coming in who are making the sport better. You're getting people coming over from K1 and things like that who are making the sport better. The only reason is because they get paid. The more casuals that see it, the better it is for us to get shows. The only issue is you have to deal with the Ric Flair woos, and which is a massive bugbear of mine.
But it's like, I'm just trying to think, you know, if you compare it to other sports like football, for example, how many people? I'm actually probably quite a few people do play football.
Oh no, so I've got a season ticket, right? And it's a lot of fat middle-aged men who can't run 10 yards.
Right, so but a lot of them don't really understand all the tactics that are happening. So it's even like for most sports, the big sports, they will have just people who are there to sort of enjoy the bigger picture, I think. And it's
a spectacle as well.
Yeah.
But you know what though? The football and other sports like that have a really simple thing to understand. Get the ball into the goal.
Yeah.
There's a celebration point. There's an achievement where you celebrate something, and the build up to it, the closer you get, you celebrate.
Yeah.
That's the knockout.
Yeah,
right.
That's the knockout.
That's the knockout. It's really easy to get.
Yeah.
The trouble with stuff like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, on the stuff on the ground, it's
sure there's a celebratory moment, but it's hard to understand how the hell they got there.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I went to Polaris a few years ago. In the first one they did in the O2 in London, and I think it was the last fight on the undercard, and it's a guy who runs a gym in Bournemouth. He does a big judo throw straight into an armbar.
Oh yes,
and it was unbelievable. But that was the only thing on the day that didn't just get a polite clap. Like, that was the only thing where people like screamed and was like, oh
yeah.
The rest of them were great skill, great artistry, but actually that was the bit. And because it was shocking, it was out of the blue, out of nowhere, so quick, and that was that kind of one bit of violence on the day that got you out of your seat to kind of scream. Those moments in things like jiu-jitsu are so few and far between. That's probably why the kind of mainstream don't jump on it.
You know what though, I think there's a big cultural aspect to the things that we like. I mean, because we're talking about really like British and American tastes. Think about the shows that they have in Japan. Rogan's always talking about...
The Pride audience was silent.
Yeah, okay, they're silent. And not only that, but Rogan's always talking about the fact that when someone like passes the guard, they get an applaud. I think maybe it's because martial arts is so much more of a thing in Japanese. I don't really know enough about Japanese culture. I'm kind of talking out my ass here, but from what I've heard and from what I understand, if I'm not just playing into stereotypes, martial arts are a much larger part of Japanese culture than they are here.
Yeah.
And maybe as a culture, they've got a better understanding about the skill involved. That's why the skill side of things plays into it so much more.
Which is why one went heavily after Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
Because he can be more appreciated in that kind of environment than...
Yeah. And also, like, I'm just thinking, you know, when Pride was on, it was silent. And, like, any K1 fight, it's silent during the fight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when things come up, like knockouts and whatever, the crowd gets a bit wild, but, like,
but you don't get the Ric Flair woos.
Yeah, exactly. So
but then you look back
that's
at
that
Pride,
culture.
and you got a lot of violence coming through Pride.
Yes.
You've got prime Vanderlei Silva, you've got prime Rampage Jackson.
Just foot stumps.
Like, I know you've got Rampage howling, Big
Yeah.
Chain kind of throwing people through the mat.
So this is why I think that this is why I talk about it being a primal thing, though. The violence bit works everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what country you're in. The violence aspect is going to work.
Did you just quote Dana White?
I hope I didn't, because I wasn't trying to, and I really hope I wasn't mimicking him. The violence thing is going to work everywhere, though.
Yeah.
Right. The skill bit isn't going to work so much. And I'll tell you the one thing you don't get in Pride. No, sorry, in one at the moment. You get the violence and you get the skill. You don't get the drama fans.
Yeah.
No one's trash talking in one.
Yeah. That's in fact, I would imagine that's frowned upon.
He
if you
actively
try to.
goes against it. Yeah. Because he does the fighter retreats where they take all the fighters away for a week, and he like wants this like friendship environment. He doesn't want this. But then again, culturally, probably that's more a respect approach. What the market wants than the USA and here.
I mean, but the US fighters like Mighty Mouse and Eddie have voiced the fact that that's what they want. They like the fact that you can respect your opponent and you don't have to play this game that you play in the UFC, for example.
Yeah, so culturally, I think the fans of drama are much more limited because it's really limited to the same language that you have to understand what they're saying to each other. It's why I think Chito Vera is really, really popular in South America.
Yeah, he's a star.
Because people understand what he's saying. Yeah. Whereas, no one knows Chito Vera. Like, Chito Vera is an undercard guy. Like, if you're a hardcore fan, you might know him and you might be a fan of him because of the skill, but no one's a fan of him. I don't even know if he trash talks in
Luke
Spanish.
Thomas touched on this recently, a few of his podcasts ago, where he was saying around Figueiredo, who just won the flyweight belt. He was like, great. You're amazing. You're this great fighter. You're really aggressive. You're huge for the weight. Learn English if you want to make money.
Yeah, because the British, English is just such a huge market because you've got all of. Well, you know how many people speak English as a second language. Everyone, like just through Europe. Everyone in Britain, everyone in America, Canada, even as far as a lot of Indians will speak English all over the world. That if you want to apply to appeal to the drama side, and not just that, but to be more relatable. I don't know if Chito Vera is talking trash. He might just be more relatable in Spanish because he's saying things. People get who he is. I don't know anything about him.
No.
His story is actually really cool.
Okay, we'll get onto that another time. It's not getting too sidetracked, but exactly. Well, I have no idea what it is because I don't hear him talking. I mean, I'm sure he can. Can he speak English?
Yeah.
He can speak English, but
to an extent, he can. Yeah.
I never hear him talking though. That's the point.
And his thing is, he is the kind of the face of South American MMA, UFC. He does the commentary. He does like in the booth kind of stuff. So
really,
he's huge in South America for being the kind of Spanish side of the board. Think kind of like what DC is, but for South America.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. And you think like back to a lot of champions who've come from Brazil. The push has always been, if you want to get the real push from the UFC, learn English.
Yeah.
Amanda Nunes won the title. Her English got a lot better, quicker.
It was interesting though that Jose Aldo never really polished his English. He was always...
Neither did Anderson Silva.
Anderson Silva neither.
But compared to Habib, has definitely been working on his English the past few years.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, right? It's an American organization. All of their things, majority of their promos and whatever they're in in English.
And it's also going to be the only way for Khabib to grow his brand. I mean, there are
Yeah.
within the artist, animal, athlete aspects, because he is ridiculously conditioned anyway. He's just not going to get any fitter at this point, quite frankly, is he? Like, in terms of violence, he's doing as much violence as he can, like smashing people like he does. Like, he might get a bit better, but it's not going to be a huge change.
Yeah.
The drama is the only side of it that's going to happen. You know what I find interesting, though, is that the drama and relatability aspects of it are bigger than the skill side of it, because despite the fact that anyone around the world can appreciate the skill aspect, the market is still that much smaller than that which speaks English. Like, the English speaking world is bigger than the people who appreciate skill. Because even though everyone in Japan will understand the skill side of it, the biggest athletes in the sport, well, you know, at one time it was Chael Sonnen, like, was enormous, and he's not, you know, he's fit and he's skilled, but he's not got
he's not an artist.
He's not an artist, and he's not got the fans of violence, and he's not got the fans of skill going after him. He's got the fans of drama.
Yep.
It's just because he trash talks.
That's what Kobe did. Kobe's a kind of modern day version of Chael Sonnen, in the sense that great athlete, really skilled, but not excelling in either of them, was close to getting cut and realised, I've got to do something, take a leaf out of Chael's book and be outrageous and take that approach. But that drama, like him or hate him, gives him more of an audience, because people want to see him get beat, people want to see him break his jaw. That sells, and that's easy to market, because the UFC only have to do kind of a few promos in English to appeal to a huge market,
and it appeals to a casual fan base that the skill side won't. Not only that, but he probably gets a fan base from just like people who are just Trump supporters, for God's sake. You know, his specific brand applies to drama outside of the sport. It's almost geopolitical at this point.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, he's the thing he did around Brazil. He copied a thing right out of Chael's book. You just turn a nation against you, and suddenly you get a lot of eyes watching from Brazil.
It was pretty bad, though. I mean, the difference to Chael is that it was almost kind of playful.
Yeah, Covington was just a bit...
Covington was awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much racist, wasn't it?
Yeah. But his whole thing is taking it to the extreme, to be that outrageous. He's trying to one-up the kind of generation before.
Well, it was literally a one-up on what Chael Sonnen did, because Covington... Well, Chael Sonnen... who did he give a bar of soap to?
The one I remember from Sonnen was I was in America playing in a playground and Anderson Silva was playing in the dirt. That's
pretty bad. But he gave someone a bar of soap and was like, I know you don't have it in your country or something. I can't remember. I don't know what he said, but he gave someone a bar of soap. Covington, on the other hand, finishes his fight and says, you're all dirty animals. It's literally a step up. Because the bar of soap thing is almost playful. And it was kind of because he did it to one specific guy.
Yeah, it's one specific guy.
And they laughed about
conference,
it. And they laughed about it, I think. So it kind of went down okay.
Yeah, but when you're in the massive arena full of the people that you're just crapping on...
Didn't the translator refuse to do it? I thought I can't remember what it was, but I just remember he calls everyone filthy animals, and I just saw the look of fear in the translator's eyes. I don't know if he just went, "No, I'm not doing it," or he said something else. But it took a little while for the booze to start coming through, probably because enough people spoke English that understood it, and it slowly percolates through the audience.
I think though that's not to kind of turn this onto society, but that's where we're at the minute, is where it's to be the next level of outrageous. McGregor did it with Khabib. Like, some of the shit he did was awful. And it's that next level of outrage, because you can't go to the line that's been given to you before, because it's already been seen. Casual fans, for the most part, are quite fickle. If they've seen it before, they don't want to see it again. So that next level, you're kind of getting that thing. And that's what a lot of people are getting at now, is we need to kind of disincentivize the approach of be a bit more outrageous, because it is getting to the point where it's getting racist. It's getting really out of hand. It's getting bad where people are fighting at weigh-ins and putting dollies through buses and things like what comes next?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Where do you one up from there? Right?
yeah, there's only so far you can go before like actual violence starts going in, and then you're getting into kind of out of the promotion thing happening. It's there's a real push to be like, actually we need to respect the skill more. The sport's been around long enough to grow your brand quickly. Promoting the violence and promoting the drama I fully get with, because it makes you more money quicker. At some point you have to get that bridge where you get your fans more educated so that they understand what's going on a bit better. They can understand the artistry a bit more. I think it's happening a bit. Adesanya sells a bit of the drama, but he's actually just really skillful, and he explains his skill, which I think opens his skill and his artistry up to the fans a bit more. But there needs to be that push for me as personally, is to get away from the just focus on drama to get casuals in, because it's going to end badly.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really disagree with any of that. To bring it back to the sort of correlation to the fighter profile, though, what I find interesting is that a lot of the ones who play on drama, like Covington and Sonnen, we said that it doesn't quite one-to-one match up, but a lot of those people who play on drama are actually the athlete side of things, because the athlete side of things doesn't actually, unless you can sell it as fans of violence, unless you're a striker, because they're wrestlers, it's not immediately sellable. So what they're actually doing is using their athlete side of things to back up the drama that they've created. They create drama and win fights through athleticism. So they're playing on fans of drama, and they're the athlete side of things. Whereas a striker will play on fans of violence and not have to trash talk. It's like we said it a couple podcasts ago, like trash talking is kind of the only way for grapplers, typically,
a boring fighter to get to get eyes.
Yeah, to get eyes on them and to make money is the only way for grapplers to do it.
Cowboy Cerrone doesn't trash talk too much.
No,
but he's a striker.
But he is your big striker.
He's
gets his knockouts.
He's above an animal, actually, less than an artist. I would put him in that category.
Yeah, I think as he's got
somewhere in the middle.
He plays up to the animal side of it, I think.
Yeah.
But I think he is really technical.
He is,
But yeah, he doesn't trash talk too much because his brand of fighting is easily sellable. Whereas somebody like a Ryan Hall would probably benefit in terms of eyes if he started chatting shit.
But it just doesn't fit with him outside of the ring, though. It just doesn't work for him.
And there's people in the sport, Ryan Hall's one of them, there's others who have said that that's just not my brand, like that's not who I am. Like I'm not artificially going to chat shit to people just to get some people watching. I'll keep winning and hopefully one day I'll get there. And I think we said this in a previous one as well, is you get up the rankings, you get up the pay scale quicker the more eyes you get on you. But if you keep winning, it's undeniable at some point.
Yeah.
Then where do you think someone like Brian Ortega fits in? Because he's not drama. Bar this business with Korean Zombie, he's a pretty nice guy most of the time.
Yep.
So he hasn't got fans of drama.
Fair play to him. He had a relationship with Claudia Gadea and she's pretty hot.
Anyway, I've completely lost my train of thought here.
No, seriously. So,
okay.
Jokes aside, that actually did quite a lot for him. That was like I started looking at him a lot more after I read that on Twitter.
Really?
Like, and I weren't really too bothered about him before that, and then got interested in him in that. So there's weird anomalies where people brand shoots up and they get eyes on them, and I
think maybe Travis Brown was that with Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then the UFC definitely jumped on that with Derek Lewis and kind of sold that. But people like Brendan Schaub, everybody knew he used to date Ronda. He definitely got a push off the back of her name.
Yeah.
But so I agree that there's the kind of the buckets of fans and how you like somebody, but then there's anomalies into how things happen and how you grow your brand. What's Frankie Edgar to a fan?
Yeah, that's a good point, because Frankie Edgar's really built on a bit of artist, but mostly athlete. Probably.
Yeah.
He's mostly athlete. Like he's a lot of wrestlers are actually.
That's what I was thinking of. For example, like Yoel Romero, like he's kind of built on this athlete thing where he's just like a superior athlete.
Yeah, he's athlete, and then people like him for the violence aspect. But the thing is, though he's a wrestler, his fan base is built on his striking, which is why it comes back to what we were saying before about the striking athletes can play on the violence fans.
Yeah. He's got a lot of clips of
just
that can
knockouts.
be persuaded as violence. When everybody knew with half a kind of understanding of MMA, the Izzy and Yoel fight wasn't going to be great because Izzy was just going to run away.
Yeah.
But the build up, I was really hyped for that fight because the UFC pushed all these like crazy knockouts that Romero had done. So you can sell athleticism and skill as violence. And I think he's benefited from that, from having a few knockouts where you can go, look, this guy's violent, you want to see him. Appeals to the casuals. It is your pure wrestlers, your Frankie Edgars, Ryan Hall, to stick to people we've spoke to today, that it's a lot harder to have that 10-second clip where you convince casuals that they're really violent and they're going to really hurt this guy. I think that's why the lighter weight classes have struggled.
It's a good point, though. So why does Frankie Edgar get so much traction? Is it just because, well, like him and Cerrone, they are more skill-based, I think. Like, that's people, it's fans of art that watch them. Is it just because they've been in the sport for so long that they've built up a big following?
So I think both of them, in similar ways, and also quite different, but they've built a reputation as being your kind of like everyman. Cowboys, you're on a ranch doing quad bikes and things like that, and being the kind of, I'll take a fight whenever. Frankie Edgar's like, I'll take a weight class, I'll take 3 weight classes, I'll move up and down, I'll fight way out of my weight class. It's that respect for their approach to fighting, which is a bit different. They're outliers in that they're different. They do something a bit different.
Yeah,
I do agree with your point that I do think they have just probably gone through a couple of generations of fans as well, and have built up that following, and they do have Cerrone doesn't, but Frankie was a champion of 2 weight classes, and
also they have the thing of, if somebody came to you now new to the gym and said, I want to get into MMA, and they said, what fight should I watch on Fight Pass? There's a couple of Cerrone fights you could give them. There's definitely a few Edgar fights you could give them. So it's that longevity of their fights. They've not been talking shit, they've not been doing this. It's got to the point now where they've got such a backlog of fights.
Yeah.
They're actually undeniable in their skill and athleticism, and it's been shown that much that you can appreciate it to the point of career longevity, things they've done. The Gray Maynard Frankie fight's always a good one to tell people to watch.
That's more playing on the animals. Well, no, maybe not actually. I mean, it's durability. It's kind of hard to say if that's animal or athlete.
It's for the US and here it's that comeback story, isn't it? He was on death's door, definitely should have lost. Looked like he was out, and then come back. Like, it's sports marketing 101, isn't it? You're down 10 points with 20 minutes to go, and suddenly it's built for the US market, that, because they love that underdog story and coming back. So I think that's the kind of difference for them.
Again, though, to come back to why, I still don't understand why Brian Ortega is so popular, though, because you mentioned Claudio Gadelha, but I don't think that's why.
No.
But the point is, he's definitely artist side of things, as a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are, because it's much less focused on physical conditioning, like in wrestling, and it's not explosive like any striking arts. So he's definitely on the artist side of things. And in terms of his fan base, doesn't create much drama.
But then are we underplaying the nation side of it? Because he plays up to his Hispanic roots.
I think that's also a thing, like his kind of underdog story in the sense of his life and where he's come from, and
so it is almost the drama.
I think it actually is because some of his promos as well, I think even the one that he did for Max, like there was a lot of focus on his story and like all his friends being coming out as criminals, and he was brought up in that environment, and that he chose jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu kind of,
Saved him from
going into crime and drugs and whatnot. So I think absolutely that's where they were trying to capitalize. And I mean, you obviously are going to get a lot of jiu-jitsu fans rooting for him just because of his ties to Gracie's and whatever.
Is also that a good thing about the casual fan base being bigger then? Because the UFC now can spend more time, because they've got more money, to give people with a good backstory the kind of shine they need, rather than just, I'm going to punch you harder than you're going to punch me, let's have a big violence.
Yeah, because you still need, it plays to the casual fan base, but it's still got to keep people invested in the sport before they're going to be paying attention to you, to play on the drama aspect of it. So I guess, yeah, it does require a big fan base to begin with to play on the drama. But I guess then that means drama isn't just to do with trash talking. Drama's to do with your entire behavior outside of the ring, which is why I think, to an extent, Cerrone is fans of drama might be fans of Cerrone, might be fans of Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
Might be fans of Brian Ortega. All for different reasons. One's for immediate entertainment, Derek Lewis. One's for, I don't know, kind of weird relatability, but also just like, this guy's kind of mental.
Yep.
Which is obviously Cerrone, and one for the backstory, because Ortega doesn't do anything immediately other than apparently hang out with every beautiful woman who is even interested in the sport. That's the only thing he does
he is
consistently. His entire drama aspect is based on his life.
Maybe it's his hair. That's pretty regal.
Could be his hair. Okay, so we've got fans of drama, fans of violence, fans of artistry, and fans of hair.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay, well, so I guess I feel like it's coming to a close at this point. So it's sort of, I think it's a good one to summarize. So we've got 3 different sort of sizes of fan base. And the smallest, even though it's worldwide, is the skill bit, because it's so much harder to get, even though it follows every country. Yeah. The next one up, you've got fans of drama, but you need to be able to relate to that person. You need to understand what they're saying.
Yeah. It's not purely that just screaming at each other.
Which is why, and because it's such a large English-speaking fan base, that's why fighters learn English in order to become a bit more popular. And then you've got fans of violence, which is such a primal and base thing.
Easy to style. Everybody loves it.
Everyone gets it, no matter what culture you're from, and those things sort of, even though the drama thing plays differently into different cultures, the violence bit is just universal.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the 3 types of fighter you've got, the violence bit, you can be, and that, well, the violence bit matches up to the animal and to the athlete, depending on how you market it.
Yep.
The athletes typically, if you're not a violent athlete, then you need to be a dramatic athlete and back it up with your athleticism.
Which tends to break down between striking heavy and grappling heavy.
Which is why people like Ryan Hall aren't so popular, but people like Colby Covington are very well known because they have the drama and then back it up with their athleticism. So you got the animal, you got the athlete, and you got the artist, which artist matches perfectly up with the skill side of things for a lot of people, which is why artists have a smaller base unless you leverage that art
to be perceived as violence.
And then you either go into the smallest base, like a grappler, or you go into the highest base. So artists can go either way. But also, it keeps you reliably at the top, whereas animals are by their nature so unpredictable, you get less of them at the head.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.